Welcome to Bible Study 24 Imrei. On this channel, we don't just tell stories, we open spiritual doors that touch the heart. Today, you're about to hear a moving story about Pope Francis's final legacy. A story not of power or fame, but of love, sacrifice, and the eternal marks he left on those who loved him most. If you're drawn to stories that stir the soul, hit the like button to support us, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Bible Study 24AH so you never miss a journey into faith, truth, and timeless inspiration. Let's begin. When the world says goodbye to great figures, we often ask, what did they leave behind? For some, it's empires of wealth, towering buildings that scrape the sky, or innovations that forever change how we live. But what about the truly powerful? What about those whose impact reached over 1 billion souls? What do they leave when they finally close their eyes? Today we step behind marble halls and papal processions to uncover the untold story of what Pope Francis, known to the world as a humble servant of God, truly left behind when he departed this world. And trust me, what his sister Maria Elena revealed will touch your heart in ways you never expected. This isn't just another story about a religious leader. This is about family sacrifice and the kind of wealth that doesn't make headlines but changes lives forever. So stay with me, because what you're about to hear might just change how you think about your own legacy. When the news broke that Pope Francis had passed away, headlines across continents echoed words like legacy, leadership, and history. His death marked the end of an era, a chapter closed in the life of a man who led over 1 billion souls with quiet strength and unwavering humility. But far from the Vatican's marble halls and distant from the international spotlight in a small town in Argentina, someone mourned him not as a global spiritual figure, but simply as a brother. Her name is Maria Elena Bergoglio, the youngest sibling of the late pontiff, and now his only surviving family member. If you're finding value in this story already, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. It helps more people discover stories like this one, and I promise you won't want to miss what's coming next. For decades, Maria Elena chose silence while Jorge Mario Bergoglio stood before crowds in St. Peter's Square and addressed heads of state. She lived a life away from the microphones, tucked quietly within the walls of her modest home in Ituzaingó. She never sought attention, never tried to leverage her brother's fame. She just lived, loved, and prayed in peace. But after her brother's final breath, that silence came to an end. Now, for the first time, Maria Elena has spoken publicly about the man the world knew as Pope Francis, but whom she knew simply as Jorge, and what she revealed has deeply moved those who listened. "He didn't leave us riches," she said softly, "but he left something far more valuable." And with those few words, the world paused. This story is not one of hidden treasures or mysterious Vatican fortunes. It's not about bank accounts, palaces, or politics. It's about something far more meaningful, a kind of wealth that doesn't make headlines. Handwritten letters, kept in drawers. Quiet acts of kindness. No camera ever captured the cost of unseen sacrifices and the love of a brother who chose the church, and in doing so, slowly gave himself away to the world. Jorge Mario Bergoglio was born in Buenos Aires in 1936, the child of Italian immigrants who had fled fascist Europe in search of freedom and stability. His father worked for the railway. A humble, disciplined man with hands marked by years of labor, Jorge grew up in a modest home, not surrounded by luxury, but by resilience. It's also the story of a family who, long before the world ever knew the name, Jorge Mario Bergoglio had already started letting go. From the humble beginnings of their childhood in Buenos Aires, where laughter and hardship lived side by side, to the moment Jorge walked out their front door to follow a higher calling, Every step carried a quiet heartbreak, and now, in the twilight of that story, we're invited to see it through the eyes of the one who knew him best, the one who knew the boy. Before the bishop, the son, before the shepherd, the big brother, before the Holy Father, Maria. Elena remembered their childhood vividly. They grew up in a modest home in Buenos Aires, surrounded by the laughter of siblings, the weight of economic struggle, and the warmth of a tight-knit family. After their brother Alberto passed away, Jorge became the eldest son, a role he embraced not with pride, but with quiet responsibility. When their father died, Jorge stepped forward without hesitation. He took extra jobs, supported their mother, and became an anchor for the whole family. He never complained. Maria recalled her voice full of emotion. He wasn't a saint on a pedestal. He wasn't a celebrity. He was just my big brother, the one who read me stories at night, the one who taught me how to pray when I was afraid of the dark. Jorge was a quiet boy, observant, often deep in thought, and when illness struck him at 21, forcing the removal of part of his lung, he did not falter. He fought. Before stepping into the priesthood, Jorge lived a life few would expect. He studied chemistry and graduated as a technician. He worked as a janitor. He even spent time as a bar bouncer earning money, where he could learn humility in unexpected places. These early years shaped him not in prestige, but in grace. Money was tight in the Bergoglio household. Every coin mattered, but love. There was plenty of that. If you're enjoying this glimpse into Pope Francis's early life, take a second to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. We've got so much more to share about this extraordinary story. We didn't see it at the time, Maria Elena reflected, but Jorge was building something that couldn't be measured in riches. He didn't buy our mother jewels. He gave her peace of mind. He didn't promise us luxury. He gave us faith. He didn't chase status. He lived to serve. Jorge wasn't just the eldest son after Alberto's passing. He became a second father to the younger children. His income put food on the table. His strength held their small world together. The Bergoglio household may have had little in the way of material wealth, but the values instilled there would eventually guide a man who would lead the global Catholic Church with humility, compassion, and an unwavering commitment to the poor. But long before the Vatican, before the titles, before the cheers, there was a moment that changed everything. A quiet conversation between siblings that Maria Elena still remembers clearly today. He was just 21, vibrant and full of life, with dreams that danced between science and soccer. He could light up a room with his laughter. He looked out for his younger siblings like a second father. He loved chemistry, cracked jokes, and had a deep, unshakable kindness. Then one afternoon, he asked her to sit with him. His tone was different, still gentle, but firm. "I feel called to something greater than myself," he told her. And with that, Jorge was gone, not out of anger, not from distance, but because purpose had come knocking. He left for the seminary, for silence, for self-denial. "It felt like we lost him," Maria said quietly. "We were proud, but it hurt." Their mother tried to smile that evening, but her eyes betrayed her heart. She spent that night and many more after in prayer. She knew, perhaps, before any of them did, what Jorge's yes to God would mean, that they would see him, less hear from him, less that he now belonged to someone else. But not once did her love fade. In fact, it grew deeper with each letter that arrived. At first, the letters came often. Jorge asked about school, sent blessings shared, thoughts on prayer. But as he rose through the church, time and duties drew their lives apart, and yet his absence was always present. "He was like a second father to me," Maria said. "When he left, it felt like my anchor had been cut." Still, she never mistook it for abandonment. She knew even then that he had found something far beyond himself. She could sense it even as a teenager, that her brother's life would never be ordinary. He had been chosen not by fame, but by a calling. He didn't chase recognition. She said, he chased God. And sometimes chasing God means leaving behind the very people you love most. That day, Jorge gave up more than his home. He gave up the pool, ordinary, the birthdays, the family dinners, the small jokes shared over tea, the silly stories, the ordinary joy. In exchange, he gave the world a leader, someone who understood sacrifice because he had lived it long before. The world was watching. In 1969, he was ordained a priest. Over time, he rose through the ranks, eventually becoming Archbishop of Buenos Aires in 2001. Pope John Paul II elevated him to cardinal, and in 2013, at the age of 76, Jorge's journey led him to the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, chosen by his fellow cardinals to lead the world's 1.3 billion Catholics. He took the name Francis, a tribute to St. Francis of Assisi, the humble friar who served the poor, loved the earth, and rejected the trappings of wealth. And Jorge followed that example with a sincerity few expected. He declined the lavish papal palace, choosing instead a modest guest house. He wore plain black shoes instead of red ones. He carried his own bags. He flew economy. He sat at the table with others not above them. To the world, he appeared to own nothing. But after his passing, something came to light, something unexpected. He did leave behind a fortune, not a fortune in gold, land, or legacy buildings, but in something far more lasting. A treasure of love, of sacrifice, of spirit. A wealth found in the hearts he touched and the lives he quietly changed. People often speak about the sacrifices Pope Francis made, but few stop to ask what his family gave up quietly without applause. Because when Jorge entered the seminary, it wasn't just his life that transformed. Their entire household shifted. The house became quieter. The family table had one less voice. Their mother cried more often, not because she regretted his decision, but because love and loss often walk hand in hand. We supported him, of course. We did, Maria Elena said, but no one prepares you for how lonely it gets. After their father died, Jorge had become a lighthouse for the family, not just a son, but a guide. And when he left, that guiding light dimmed. He was the glue. Maria admitted, we didn't fall apart, but we felt the crack. Still, they never let go of their love for him. They saved every letter he sent, every photo, every mention in a newspaper. And when the day came that he was elected Pope, they rejoiced and grieved at the same time. The boy we once ran through puddles with, Maria said, was now the Pope. And deep down, we knew we'd never truly have him back. If this story of sacrifice and family love is touching you, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support helps share these powerful stories with more people. As Jorge's profile grew, so did the scrutiny. Journalists arrived at their doorstep. Strangers asked personal questions. The media speculated. Family stories were unearthed, reinterpreted, picked apart. But Maria stayed silent, not out of fear, but out of love. We gave him to the world, she said. That was our offering. She still remembers her mother's words. He doesn't belong to just us anymore. He belongs to God. And in the years that followed, as controversy swirled and the church weathered storms, the Bergoglio family carried the weight of it all with grace. We cried in private, Maria said, but we always believed in him. Always. Because behind every man who touches the world is often a family who quietly gives more than anyone ever sees. And for the Bergoglios, the deepest sacrifice wasn't losing Jorge. It was knowing they could never fully have him back. Our lives changed overnight, Maria Elena recalled, her voice soft but unwavering as she looked back on that unforgettable day in 2013. From the moment they announced his name, he no longer belonged to just us. He belonged to the world. That was the day her brother Jorge Mario Bergoglio became Pope Francis, and everything about their lives shifted in an instant. What was once private became public. What was once shared between siblings now had to be offered to the global church. As his profile grew, so did the scrutiny. Journalists arrived at their doorstep. Strangers asked personal questions. The media speculated, family stories were unearthed, reinterpreted, picked apart. But Maria stayed silent, not out of fear, but out of love. Fame is a double-edged sword, and even popes are not immune to the world's judgment. After Jorge became Pope Francis, his past was dissected and analyzed under a harsh global lens. Journalists combed through decades of history. Critics pointed to Argentina's darkest chapters, the dictatorship of the 1970s, and asked hard questions. Some accused him of silence during those terrifying years. Others claimed he became a priest, not out of faith, but heartbreak, suggesting he ran to religion to escape lost love. For Maria Elena, watching the world speculate on her brother's soul was a slow and silent torment. People say things they don't understand. She said, they see a photo and think they know a life. But according to Maria, the truth is far more complex and far more courageous. Their family had fled fascism in Italy. Her father had stood against tyranny. That legacy, she says, flowed through Jorge's veins. When the military dictatorship gripped Argentina, Jorge did not look away. He navigated the shadows carefully, quietly helping where he could, without drawing deadly attention. He helped people. He protected priests. If he had shouted from the rooftops, they would have killed him, Maria explained, so he moved like a whisper. But he never abandoned anyone. The most infamous accusations centered around two Jesuit priests, Orlando Yorio and Francisco Jalix, who were captured and tortured. Some claimed Jorge failed them, but survivor testimonies tell a different story. Some even say he saved their lives. He didn't go around bragging. Maria said he just did what was right quietly. And then there were the rumors of romance, that he once loved a woman, that a broken heart pushed him to the altar. Maria smiles at the memory, not in mockery, but in sadness. He felt the call to priesthood when he was just a boy. She said, he didn't flee love. He ran toward a greater love, God. When Jorge was elected Pope in 2013, the world celebrated a new era for the Catholic Church. Here was a man from Latin America, the first non-European pope in over 200 years, taking the name of Francis, a saint, known for his love of the poor and his connection to God's creation. People celebrated in the streets of Buenos Aires. Television cameras captured the joy in Argentina. But what those cameras didn't capture was the mixture of pride and loss felt by the Bergoglio family, especially Maria Elena. I was in my kitchen when the phone rang. She remembers a neighbor called screaming that my brother had been chosen. I fell to my, not just in prayer, but because my legs simply gave out. For Maria, this wasn't just a historical moment. It was personal. It was final. Whatever small access she still had to her brother would now be further diminished. Whatever private conversations they could still have would now be even rarer. I was so proud, she says, her voice breaking slightly, but I also knew in that moment that he now belonged to history, not to us. When Pope Francis stepped onto the balcony of St. Peter's for the first time, the world saw a humble man asking for prayers before he gave his first blessing. What they didn't see was a family in Argentina watching on a small television, crying tears that mixed joy and grief in equal measure. If this glimpse into the personal cost of public service is moving you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. It helps us share these powerful human stories with more people. The days following his election were a whirlwind for the Bergoglio family. Suddenly, their home was surrounded by journalists. Their phone rang constantly. Everyone wanted to know about Jorge. what he was like as a child, what he ate for breakfast, what books he read. Maria Elena chose silence, not because she had nothing to say, but because she understood something profound. Her brother's journey was now beyond their family story. It belonged to the world, our mother had always told us. Be humble in all things, Maria recalls. So when the world came knocking, asking for stories about the Pope, I remembered her words. This wasn't about us. It was about what God was doing through Jorge. Still, the silence had its cost. As Pope Francis began to reform the church, as he washed the feet of prisoners, embraced the disfigured, spoke out for refugees, and challenged the powerful Maria, Elena watched from afar, unable to call him to ask how he was really doing, to tell him she was proud. When he would appear on television looking tired, I couldn't bring him tea or ask if he was sleeping enough, she says. That was the hardest part, seeing him carry the weight of the world and not being able to lighten his load even a little. For years, Maria Elena remained silent. She watched her brother's name rise on global stages. She heard the praise and the criticism, and she stayed in the background praying, grieving, waiting. But behind this public separation was a private connection that sustained both brother and sister across the miles and years, letters, dozens of them, some written decades ago, others just months before his death. In a small wooden box, aged and delicate, Maria keeps what she calls her greatest treasure, not jewelry, not heirlooms, but letters. These were never meant for the world. They were never posted online or read aloud. They were gifts wrapped in ink proof that beneath the robes, beneath the mitre, behind the title, Jorge never stopped being her big brother. His words gave me strength, Maria whispered. They made it feel like he was never really gone. After his death, the Vatican offered her keepsakes, ceremonial garments, symbolic gifts, commemorative items. But Maria declined most of them. Only wanted the letters. She said, "They're worth more to me than anything the world could offer, because those letters are more than words. They are evidence that the boy from Buenos Aires never forgot his roots, never stopped writing. Home. Some notes are short and simple. I carry you with me in prayer every morning. Others are deeply moving. I know Mama would be proud. Keep going. God sees everything." If these intimate glimpses into the relationship between Pope Francis and his sister are touching your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support means everything. Throughout his entire papacy, Jorge never let status rewrite his soul. He kept sending letters, kept asking for prayers. "Pray for me," he would always say. "Don't stop. I feel your prayers from here." That was his inheritance to her, not robes or relics, but love written in his own hand. In one letter, he enclosed a childhood photo of the two of them, now tucked by her bedside. In another, a dried flower from a Vatican garden. He didn't just write, she said, he gave me pieces of himself. After Jorge's death, Maria finally opened a drawer she had left untouched for years. Inside were dozens of letters, decades of handwritten notes, birthday blessings, Christmas reflections, and quiet encouragement sent from Rome. Every card carried his spirit, every word, a piece of his soul. She said, "It was like he was sitting beside me. No matter how far away he was, we were never truly apart." The world often measures wealth by what we can hold in our hands: homes, cars, currency. But for Maria Eleanor, her brother left something richer. The kind of devotion that lingers, the kind of memory that doesn't fade, the kind of love that never needed to be announced to be real. So when she cried, it wasn't for the things he didn't leave behind. It was for what he gave her that no one else ever could, the quiet certainty that she had been loved deeply, consistently, and without condition. Every Sunday, Maria Eleanor would sit at her small table after Mass and write to her brother, sometimes about family matters, a cousin's new baby, a neighbor's illness, sometimes about her own struggles with aging, with loneliness, with questions of faith. And always without fail, Jorge would write back, not with formal papal statements, not with theological dissertations, but with the simple words of a brother who still remembered the little girl who once followed him everywhere, Chinita. He would begin many letters using the childhood nickname he had given her. Remember when we used to, and in those moments, reading his careful handwriting, the Pope disappeared, and Jorge returned the boy who had taught her to ride a bicycle, who had defended her against playground bullies, who had explained math problems at the kitchen table. When Pope Francis died, the Vatican, as tradition dictates, began its solemn novena, 9 days of mourning for a man who led the Church with humility and resolve. During this sacred time, multiple masses were celebrated. Pope Francis's body, in accordance with ancient rites, was anointed and blessed before it lay in state beneath the vast dome of St. Peter's Basilica. Thousands entered that holy place to say goodbye, to whisper prayers, to give thanks. But true to the life he lived, Pope Francis left specific instructions: no grandeur, no gilded display. While others might have requested marble thrones or regal send-offs, Jorge Mario Bergoglio asked for a wooden coffin, plain, simple, open, just like the man he always was. People expect treasures when a figure of his stature passes secret relics. Hidden wealth whispered vaults beneath Rome's stones. But when the Pope died, the Vatican did not uncover riches. There were no golden chests, no secret banks. What Jorge left behind wasn't built of currency or counted in coin. It was hidden in places few bothered to look, in relationships, in handwritten pages, in moments never meant to make headlines. He didn't have wealth. Maria Elena said he had love. We're over halfway through this incredible story. If you're finding value in it, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us reach more people with these powerful stories. In the small wooden box where Maria keeps her brother's letters, there's one that stands apart from the others. The final letter. It arrived just weeks before his death. It wasn't long, Maria said, but it said everything. In it, Jorge wrote, "My body is tired, but my heart is strong, and you, Germanita, have always been part of that strength." He didn't mention illness. He didn't say goodbye. Instead, he wrote about hope, about love, about continuing the journey. "He told me to keep going," Maria whispered, "to pray, to love." That letter, with its fragile paper and smudged ink, made her weep, not just because it was the last, but because it reminded her of who he had always been. The boy who once hid chocolate under her pillow, the teenager who held her hand, the day their father died, the brother who, even beneath the weight of the Church, never stopped writing to say, "I'm thinking of you." And in his final line, he left her with this: "No matter what happens next, you will always have my prayers and my love." That was Jorge's last gift. And for Maria Elena, it was worth more than all the treasures Rome could offer. As the funeral bells echoed across Vatican courtyards and the world moved on to its next story, Maria Elena remained still, not frozen in grief, but rooted in memory. For many, the passing of Pope Francis marked the end of a papacy, but for Maria, it was something quieter and more eternal. The continuation of a promise, a life lived with purpose, and a legacy now entrusted to her heart. In the quiet of her modest Argentinian home, far from the marble floors of St. Peter's, Maria has begun to do something she hadn't allowed herself to do in years: open the letters. Not just the final ones or those wrapped in ribbons, but the old ones. The ones he sent when he was still just Jorge writing from a small seminary, unsure of where the path would lead, but confident that it was the right one. Those letters were written in humble ink on creased paper. There were no grand declarations, no theological statements, just thoughts, prayers, encouragement, jokes, love. She spreads them out on her kitchen table some mornings one by one, as if inviting the past to sit beside her. But among all these treasured correspondences, there is one that Maria Elena keeps closest to her heart. The final letter from her brother. It was tucked in a bundle wrapped in faded ribbon resting in the same drawer where she kept all the others. It arrived just weeks before his death. "My body is tired, but my heart is strong," he wrote. "And you, Germanita, have always been part of that strength." Unlike what many might expect from a man facing his mortality, Jorge didn't fill his final letter with grand proclamations or somber goodbyes. Instead, he wrote about hope, about continuing the journey, about the small things that had always mattered most to them both. He told me about a child he had blessed who reminded him of me when I was young. Maria recalls her eyes misting. He asked about my garden, about whether the roses had bloomed this year. He remembered everything, even the small things I thought he would have forgotten long ago. What strikes Maria most about this final letter isn't what it said about death, but what it said about life, about connection, about memory, about the threads that bind us, even when everything else falls away. In his final line, he wrote, "No matter what happens next, you will always have my prayers and my love." As Maria shares, her voice breaking slightly, he didn't say goodbye. He said forever. For Maria Elena, this wasn't just a letter. It was a promise that transcended death, that reached beyond the grave. It was Jorge still being her big brother, still making sure she knew she wasn't alone. We've shared so much of this touching story. If it's moved, you please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It helps us bring more stories like this to light. When Maria reads that final letter, now she doesn't hear the voice of Pope Francis, the global figure. She hears Jorge, the boy who once carried her on his shoulders when she was too tired to walk. The young man who taught her that faith wasn't about rules, but about love. The brother who never let his titles change how he saw her, as the precious little sister he had always protected. Some people might think it's strange, Maria says, but I still write to him. I tell him about my day, about my struggles, about the moments when I feel his presence most. I know somewhere he's still reading my words, still caring, still loving me, just as he always did. In a world that measures greatness by wealth, by power, by influence, Jorge Mario Bergoglio left behind something far more profound. The certainty that love, when it is genuine, never ends. It simply changes form. Now, as the months have passed, the world's attention has moved on. News cycles have shifted. The Vatican has begun its careful transition into a new chapter. And yet, in a quiet neighborhood in Ituzaingó, Argentina, one woman continues to carry the memory of Pope Francis. Not as an institution, but as a person. Not as a headline, but as a heartbeat. Maria Elena never asked for this role. She never wanted to be seen as the Pope's sister or as the guardian of his private life. But something changed the day she stood before that small wooden box of letters. Her brother's words transcending time, reminding her that love does not fade with distance, and purpose does not end with death. And so she began to live differently, not dramatically, not in grand speeches or public declarations, but in the everyday, in the quiet ways her brother had always honored God through kindness, service, and presence. She began visiting the parish more frequently, not as a guest of honor, but as a volunteer. She helped with cleaning after Mass. She brought warm meals to widows who had no family left. She sat beside the lonely and simply listened, just like Jorge used to do, and every time she acted, she did so not with his name, but with his spirit in mind. Her neighbors began to notice, not because she spoke of her grief, but because she moved with such calm conviction, the kind that cannot be faked. One of them, an elderly woman named Florencia, approached her after Mass and said, "You walk like someone who still hears him." Maria smiled. She did. There were moments when she felt his presence not as memory, but as clarity in prayer. In silence in the faces of the poor, Jorge had once told her, "The voice of God is often disguised as the cry of someone forgotten." She hears that voice now more than ever. She started a weekly prayer group in her home, not to lead it, just to host it. People came, some out of curiosity, others in search of peace. They gathered in her living room surrounded by candles and quiet music and shared stories of their own lost faith and hopes. Maria rarely spoke much, but when she did, it was usually to read one of Jorge's letters, not because he was Pope, but because he had written them as a brother, a spiritual companion, someone who understood the cost of walking with God. If this story of continuing a powerful legacy has touched you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. It helps us reach more people with these meaningful stories. Today, if you were to visit Maria Elena's home, you would find nothing extravagant, just a small table with flowers. A candle always lit a photograph of two children smiling in black and white. And beside it, a final letter, worn at the edges, folded carefully, kept like a prayer. She doesn't read it every day, but she remembers every word. And sometimes when the night is especially quiet, she places her hand over it and whispers back, "I'm still praying, Jorge. I'm still loving, and I'm still not afraid." Because while the world may have lost a pope, Maria never lost her brother, and through her and others, like her, his legacy lives on. To the world he was, Pope Francis, a man of humility, courage, and compassion. To the Church, he was a reformer, a bridge builder, a shepherd of souls. But to Maria Elena, he was Jorge, her brother, her protector, her reminder that greatness is not measured in thrones, but in tenderness in the ordinary moments we offer each other with extraordinary love. And though his voice has grown still and the white cassock now rests untouched in a Vatican archive, Jorge's legacy continues not in monuments, but in the quiet lives he changed, in every small act of kindness done in his name, in every prayer whispered by someone who once heard him say, "Do not be afraid." So what does it mean to leave a true legacy? Is it measured in the buildings that bear our names, in the wealth we accumulate, in the power we wield? Or is it found in something far more enduring? The lives we touch, the love we share, the moments of kindness that ripple outward long after we're gone. Jorge Mario Bergoglio, the boy from Buenos Aires who became Pope Francis, understood something profound that many of us spend lifetimes learning. True wealth isn't counted in possessions, but in presence, in being fully there for those we love, even when separated by oceans, by duties, by the weight of global responsibility. His greatest legacy wasn't the reforms he introduced to the Church, though they were significant. It wasn't the speeches he gave that moved millions, though. They were powerful. It wasn't even the humble example he set by declining luxury and embracing simplicity, though it inspired countless souls. No, his greatest legacy was the love he never stopped giving to his family, to the poor, to the forgotten, to all who crossed his path. It was the certainty that each person mattered, that no one was beyond the reach of compassion, that even the smallest act of kindness carried cosmic significance. And perhaps that's the message he left for all of us, that our legacies aren't built in grand gestures, but in consistent love, in showing up day after day for those who need us, in writing the letters, making the calls, offering the prayers, extending the hand of friendship. In the end, when all the titles fade and all the accolades grow silent, what remains is how we made others feel, seen, heard, valued, loved. That's the inheritance worth leaving. That's the wealth that truly matters. If this story has touched your heart or changed your perspective, even a little, Please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and share this video with someone who might need its message today. Because in sharing stories of love and legacy, we extend the ripples that Pope Francis and his sister, Maria Elena, continue to create in our world. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the heart of what it means to leave behind a legacy that truly matters. Until next time, remember, it's not what we take with us, but what we leave behind that defines us.